Hello everyone, it's Mary Rose, and today we are talking about Adrian Ang Sang. He is the Crown Prince of Atlantis in the beginning of Hold On, which is the first book in the Shadow of Light series. My audio is going to sound kind of weird for majority of my videos, as I'm in college now, I'm in my dorm. My laptop, no matter what mic I use, sounds weird, and so far, the earbuds my brother got me have been the best mic quality. So I'm going to use these. I'm going to hope. I'm honestly going to hope I didn't mess up my audio somehow. But today we were talking about Adrian, giving more details about his life before the book. I won't go over in as much detail him meeting Cora and Anitra because they have their own separate videos, which I will link at the end in the little end card things. Um, but I give more detail about their relationship. I will kind of give more detail on the beginning of Adrian and Cora's relationship and how he felt about it because there's a lot of it's hinted at in the books, but I never fully explain it because it's while it's important, it wasn't the main focus of that. It comes up in a later book how he felt about it, but yeah. So Adrian was born September 15th, 3000 BC. He married Cora Daunton when he was 10 and Anitra when he was 12. Which is young, but wasn't uncommon for the Atlantis royal family. What was uncommon was King Phoenix, essentially making Adrian and Cora consummate the marriage and start trying for kids immediately. That was uncommon. But um, he has a daughter, Luna, with Cora, and then Brayden and Adam are Anitra's children. Again, I go over in more detail the children born in Cora and Anitra's videos. But he was the first of six children that King Phoenix and Queen Saya had. He was mainly cared for by tutors and nurses, and he learned quickly to stay silent when his parents did rarely decide to visit. The monarch's abusive behavior was known to everyone, and many believed Adrian would inherit their cruelty. But despite his parents' treatment, or perhaps because of it, he grew up very kind. He would take the blame for things his little siblings did, even if they didn't do anything wrong, their parents would often just fly off the rails. He would take the blame for it so they wouldn't get hurt. The nobles of the court did try to protect Adrian and his siblings. They would invite them for dinner parties, hunting trips, but the tactic usually only worked with Annabelle and Amory, as Phoenix and Saya didn't pay much attention to Annabelle and Amory, but they they would bog down Adrian with work. They would Queen Saya often would try to force Atlanta and Eslin into a whole bunch of lessons about being princesses. And then when King Phoenix had decided Atlanta was his favorite, he would often drag her off for night training or whatever he wanted to do with her, giving the appearance that he loved her the most, which would probably be true. Um, but luckily, Annabelle and Amory did kind of get away from the majority of the abuse because their parents didn't have much interest in either of them, which Adrian was grateful for because they were the most kind of mentally and emotionally vulnerable. Adrian met Cora Danton on a royal progress. His father brought him to the tavern where Cora was working. King Phoenix wanted to push Adrian towards drinking and sleeping with prostitutes and essentially being another him. Adrian didn't want to, but when it was revealed that Cora was his soulmate, that kind of changed the plan because it happened in front of everyone. The king wasn't happy about it because Cora was inferior. Not nobly, she was of a noble line. She was the cousins to the holders of the Baron of Hardrail title, but her mother was a mermaid. She was half mer, which was considered inferior by King Phoenix and some of the older nobles. But there were too many witnesses to deny what happened, and denying someone their soulmate is considered a massive crime in Atlantis, Meadow Island, Rada, any of the kingdoms. So King Phoenix agreed on the condition that Adrian would eventually take a second consort for political advantage. And that was not uncommon. Um, and it was often kind of agreed upon that it would be a political marriage only to try and keep the peace. Oftentimes, if this occurred, there wouldn't be any children from this political marriage, and they would kind of go into the marriage with their own soulmates, and um, they would just kind of work with keeping the peace with their families. It was thought that since they were had to live together, they might decide to try and keep the peace just a little bit more. But Adrian and Cora's marriage did have a rocky start. They were hopeful that they would grow to love each other and become beloved monarchs like the first King Atlas and his wife Queen Anna. They were separated almost immediately. King Phoenix demanded a child from them soon after the wedding, despite Cora's age, and both of them had asked to be given time. King Phoenix he wouldn't listen. He demanded they consummate the marriage. He demanded a child. And he would only allow them to see each other late at night after Adrian was done with the work King Phoenix had kind of forced onto him. Adrian was terrified to not do what his father said. He knew how violent King Phoenix would be if he did, like, if he did talk to Cora, if he didn't, for lack of a better term, because if he didn't consummate and try for a child, um, and even if they did try and then tried to talk and become friends after, King Phoenix would often find out, and then Adrian knew how violent his dad could be, so he was terrified of talking to Cora. Um, Cora understood once Adrian explained to her why he was barely talking to her, but she was still kind of annoyed because that was a risk she was willing to take. She would rather know Adrian and have to deal with his dad getting violent than essentially being isolated. But after a month, Phoenix kind of got bored of terrorizing them, leaving them in relative peace. And once Adrian realized this, the fear kind of faded away, and he he started talking to Cora, and they became good friends very quickly. And again, the king's abuse was known throughout the kingdom, even by younger people. So Cora knew what the king was doing, and she joined Adrian in his quest to protect his siblings. And she'd become more of a mother to them, while he became more of a father than an older brother. And Adrian first realized that he loved Cora in some capacity after a young Atlanta came to their room after a nightmare where King Phoenix had started hurting Adrian for no reason. And Cora rocked her to sleep, told her stories about being a mermaid and going under the sea, and promising that she wouldn't let their father harm her or Adrian that night. Um, Adrian was nervous about the political marriage his father wanted him to make, and Cora was nervous as well. But she joked that she would finally have a girl her age to talk to because she was very isolated in the palace. Again, King Phoenix didn't like her, Queen Saya didn't like her. The only people who would really talk to her were Annabelle and Atlanta. Eslin would try, but she didn't really know how to get along with Cora. They were two kind of very different people. And Amory was, I believe, just a couple years old at the time. So he had like an inkling of who Cora was, but he doesn't really remember her. But she was still very isolated. It was rare that Annabelle and Atlanta were able to actually interact with her. But both were relieved at Anitra being their soulmate because being soulmates gave them a better chance at getting along. Soulmate isn't a magic, they will love each other no matter what thing. It is just who they're meant to be with, who completes them. And it is still up to the soulmates to create that relationship. Knowing their soulmates kind of gave them the reassurance of, okay, we are eventually meant to have this relationship and be together and love each other. That will eventually come. And so it kind of took some of the pressure off of how do we navigate it being a political only marriage because they believed that they would just start loving each other. Um, and Adrian, like Anitra, was devastated when Cora died, and he developed many self-destructive habits that Anitra and Atlanta struggled to talk him out of. He would self-harm, he would drink, um, he almost began smoking, but Adam, Captain Adam, as he's referred to in the books, he he talked Adrian out of that one, but he only stopped drinking and self-harming when Atlanta started to copy him because Atlanta had figured out that talking him out of it wouldn't work. But if he knew she was starting to do that, he would stop because he feared what it would do to his little sister and he cared more about her than he did himself. Adrian did fight on the battlefield against the War of Zerano. That's the main war in the book, and he missed the birth of his twins with Anitra, which he was not happy about, but he was just happy that she was alive. Um, and later he would send his daughter with Cora, Princess Luna, away to Neto Island with his grandmother, who was Queen Seiya's mother, um, to protect her from the war and King Phoenix. After becoming king, it became clear that bringing Luna home would just put her in danger of being killed, so he left her in Neto Island for a bit. And he had planned to send Anitra and their twins, but Atlantis was defeated and fell before he could. The fate of King Adrian, Queen Anitra, and their twin boys is unknown. Luna would grow up in Neto Island, and I believe roughly around 30, all traces of her disappear as well. So it's unknown whether she died or they just stopped recording her for her safety. But that is a little more detail about Adrian Ang Sang. He was the Crown Prince of Atlantis. He was married to Corin Anitra. And that'll be all for this. Stay safe, have a lovely day, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye. Hello. Ow. I used the wrong audio. I'm not re-recording now. Probably turn this down. Well, I hope this sounds better at least. Time to double check.